Imagine stepping out to your backyard coop every morning and finding a fresh, perfect egg waiting for you. Now imagine one hen giving you 364 eggs in a single year, out of 365 days. Just pause on that for a moment. No artificial lights forcing her body to lay. No heated barn protecting her from every change in weather. No hormones. No overpriced, scientifically formulated feed bag with a barcode and a big promise on the label. Just a hardworking chicken on open pasture, doing what nature, good breeding, and generations of careful farmers shaped her to do. This bird could face freezing winters, snow-covered ground, and scorching summer heat without falling apart. She rarely got sick, and the eggs she produced were not ordinary supermarket eggs either. They carried twice the omega-3s and 3 times the vitamin E, compared with the eggs most people buy under bright grocery store lights. For one remarkable moment in farming history, this breed was known around the world. Farmers raised her with pride. Families collected steady eggs from their own yards and fed themselves for very little money. Then, almost unbelievably, she began to disappear. Not because she stopped laying. Not because another chicken truly replaced her. She faded from the mainstream because she performed too well. And when a bird can feed families, reproduce naturally, stay healthy, and reduce dependence on expensive systems, she becomes a serious threat to a $500 billion industry. Welcome to Farmyard Care. Today, we are opening the door to one of the most overlooked stories in agriculture. By the end of this video, you will know what this bird is, why powerful food interests had every reason to push her out of memory, and how you can bring this kind of resilience back to your own land for real food independence. Let's get into it. Part 1. The Legend of the 365-Egg Chicken. The story of this extraordinary egg-laying chicken begins in the late 1800s. Over in England, a breeder named William Cook developed a strong, dependable, dual-purpose bird known as the Black Orpington. It was a respectable farm chicken, useful for both meat and eggs. But the real transformation began when these birds made their way across the ocean to Australia in the early 1900s. The farmers in Australia who worked with these birds were not chasing beauty contests. They were not trying to win ribbons with fancy feathers or perfect show ring posture. They had one clear goal: eggs. More eggs, larger eggs, and steady eggs day after day. So they began refining the bird with serious purpose. They crossed Orpingtons with white leghorns to strengthen laying consistency, added Rhode Island Reds to push production higher, and used Minorcas and Langshans to improve stamina, size, and toughness. The result was a bird that would soon become famous around the world: the Australorp. What happened next changed how people looked at poultry production. In the 1920s, Australorps entered serious egg-laying trials, where birds were tested under equal, natural conditions, without artificial tricks or special treatment. And these hens broke through limits that many farmers thought were impossible. In 1922, at Geelong in Victoria, Australia, a pen of only 6 Australorp hens laid an incredible 1,157 eggs in 365 days. That averaged nearly 310 eggs per hen in 1 year. But that was not the end of the story. Soon, individual hens began reaching 347 eggs, then 354 eggs in a year. Then came the record that turned this breed into a legend. One single Australorp hen laid 364 eggs in 365 consecutive days. That means 1 egg almost every day for an entire year. Farmers everywhere took notice. Orders and interest began pouring in from the United States, England, South Africa, Canada, and beyond. During the golden age of poultry, Australorps were not just another backyard chicken. They were the stars of the egg-laying world. Part 2. The Lifetime Layer. While the Australorp became famous for astonishing yearly egg production, another old breed became legendary for a different reason: long-term, steady productivity. This bird did not build its name on one explosive year of laying. It built its reputation on endurance. Its name sounds almost unreal: the Westfälischer Totlager, better known as the German Deathlayer. This rare breed comes from the rugged Ravensburg foothills of Germany and has been around for more than 400 years. That makes it more than just a chicken breed. It is a living piece of farming history. The name did not originally mean something dark or frightening. It comes from the Low German word Dauerlager, which means a long-term layer or everyday layer. Over time, Through regional dialects and the admiration of farmers who saw what this bird could do, the name changed into Deathlayer, or Deathlayer. The meaning behind it was simple but powerful: a hen with the strength and stamina to keep laying almost until the day she dies. The Deathlayer does not usually lay 365 eggs in a single year. But what she does is something many modern commercial birds cannot match. She can produce around 200 beautiful white eggs a year and keep that steady production going for 10 to 12 years. She is also a striking bird to look at, with deep black eyes, beautiful silver or gold penciled feathers, and a tight rose comb that helps protect her from frostbite in cold mountain winds. Everything about this chicken shows the value of natural selection and practical farm breeding. And yet, despite all of that, this breed is now extremely rare. Today, only about 1,500 remain in their native Germany, placing them in serious danger of disappearing. Which raises the question, how does a chicken that can provide eggs for a decade end up pushed so close to extinction? Here is where the story becomes even more interesting. Ask experienced poultry keepers who have raised true heritage birds like Australorps or Deathlayers, and many of them will tell you the same thing. These birds are simply tougher. They do not fall apart easily. They handle weather changes, rougher conditions, and everyday farm challenges far better than many modern commercial birds. So what is the reason? A big part of the answer is hidden deep in their genetics, especially in a region known as the Major Histocompatibility Complex, or MHCB. In simple terms, you can think of the MHC as one of the control centers of a chicken's immune system. It helps the bird recognize threats and respond to disease. Modern industrial poultry breeding has focused heavily on uniformity. In a large factory-style system, companies want birds that grow the same, eat the same, lay the same, and respond the same to feed, light, and controlled conditions. To achieve that level of uniformity, the genetic pool becomes narrower and narrower. That may make production easier to manage on a large scale, but it also creates weakness. Commercial laying birds, such as white leghorns, are often associated with very low MHC diversity. In practical terms, that means they can become genetically fragile. They depend heavily on controlled housing, vaccination programs, antibiotics, and strict management to stay productive. Heritage birds are different. They were shaped in open environments, small farms, free-range systems, and real weather. Many came from landrace backgrounds or were bred by farmers who kept only the strongest, most useful birds year after year. That kind of pressure created what is known as balancing selection. The birds with weak immune systems did not last. The birds that could handle cold, heat, parasites, disease pressure, and changes in feed were the ones that survived and reproduced. Over generations, that built a much broader set of natural defenses. That is why a good heritage chicken is more than just a pretty old breed. It carries generations of survival knowledge in its body. When disease pressure rises or the weather turns harsh, a heritage bird has a stronger natural toolkit to work with. A commercial bird often depends on the system around it. A heritage bird depends more on the resilience bred into it. Part 4. The Rise of the Disposable Chicken. If heritage chickens are so hardy, productive, and capable of living useful lives for many years, then the obvious question is this: why did they fade from the mainstream? To understand that, we have to look at the industrial shift that changed poultry farming forever. The modern agricultural system was not built around a hen that could live and produce for 10 years. It was built around speed, volume, and constant replacement. The industry did not want a long-lived farm bird that families could keep, breed, and depend on. It wanted a biological machine that produced heavily, burned out quickly, and created steady repeat sales. That is where the commercial hybrid entered the picture, with birds like the Isle Brown and the Cornish cross. These are not breeds in the old farm sense. They are controlled hybrid crosses, designed for extreme performance in a short window of time. An Isle Brown can begin laying at around 16 weeks and may produce an impressive 300 to 350 eggs in her first year. But that level of early production comes with a serious cost. A hybrid hen's body is pushed hard from the beginning. Her metabolism runs at a very high pace, and to keep making eggshells day after day, her body can begin pulling calcium from her own bones. By the time she reaches 18 to 24 months, many of these hens are already worn down. Egg numbers drop sharply. Health problems such as weak bones, reproductive issues, and tumors become far more common. In the commercial system, she is no longer seen as valuable. She is considered spent and removed from production. And there is one more trap built into this system. Because these birds are F1 hybrids, they do not breed true. If you hatch their eggs, the chicks will not reliably carry the same traits. They may be uneven, weaker, or completely unpredictable. So the farmer cannot simply keep a flock going generation after generation. Instead, the farmer is pushed back to the hatchery every year to buy the next batch. Part 5. The economics of the disappearance. The $500 billion machine. Now we come to the real turning point in this story. If you want to understand why certain birds are promoted and others are forgotten, follow the money. Today, the global poultry industry is worth over $320 billion, and the feed industry adds another $200 billion on top of that. Together, this creates a $500 billion machine built around chicks, feed, medicine, genetics, processing, and constant replacement. Much of that system is influenced by a small number of powerful multinational companies, including names like Tyson Foods, the EW Group, and Hendrix Genetics, which hold enormous control over commercial poultry breeding stock around the world. Now ask yourself a simple question. What happens to a massive feed industry when a heritage hen can walk across open pasture and find a large share of her own food? What happens to veterinary drug sales when a naturally hardy bird is far less likely to collapse under ordinary farm conditions? What happens to genetics companies when a family can keep Australorps or Deathlayers in the backyard, hatch their own chicks, and build a flock without buying replacements every season? They lose money. You cannot patent an Australorp. You cannot patent sunlight, grass, worms, beetles, garden scraps, or the living soil under a hen's feet. Heritage chickens are like open-source farming technology. They belong to the farmer, not to a corporation. And that is what made them inconvenient. These birds did not fit neatly into a system that depends on recurring purchases. They could reproduce naturally, forage efficiently, stay productive for years, and reduce the need for expensive inputs. So over time, they were pushed out of the spotlight. They disappeared from many hatchery catalogs, were ignored by mainstream agricultural programs, and were replaced by birds that kept farmers dependent on the industrial supply chain. In simple terms, some of the greatest chickens in the world were not forgotten because they failed. And they were pushed aside because they worked too well. Part 6. The Feed Trap. Now let's bring this back to the part every backyard keeper understands, the feed bill. If you have raised commercial hybrids, you know how fast the cost adds up. You go to the store, buy a 50-pound bag of specialized layer pellets for around $25, and before long, the bag is empty. For many backyard keepers, the yearly cost of keeping fragile, high-production hybrids alive and laying can reach $800 to $1,200. That happens because these birds are built to depend on a steady supply of carefully balanced, high-protein feed. If a hybrid hen does not get the nutrition her body demands, her condition can decline quickly. Her system is already under pressure from heavy egg production, so any shortage shows up fast. Heritage breeds were shaped under a very different model. They were built for what I like to call the scavenging economy. Birds like the Australorp and the Deathlayer are active, intelligent foragers. They have strong digestive systems, good crop capacity, and a deep instinct to scratch, search, and hunt for food. Give them access to pasture, a garden edge, an orchard, or even a well-managed backyard run with deep mulch, and they will go to work. They will search for grubs, beetles, seeds, tender greens, fallen fruit, and anything else the land provides. They do not just wait at the feeder all day. They turn the farm itself into part of their diet. In a true free-range or well-managed rotational system, heritage birds can reduce feed costs by 30 to 50%. They are not valuable simply because they eat less. They are valuable because they know how to use the land. They convert insects, weeds, and natural scraps into eggs, fertility, and long-term flock health. A commercial hybrid eats to keep up with an intense, short-lived production cycle. A heritage bird eats to build a strong frame, maintain natural resilience, and keep producing year after year. Part 7. And this foraging lifestyle leads to one of the greatest rewards of raising heritage birds, the egg itself. If the only eggs you have known are the pale, watery, yellow-yolked eggs from the supermarket shelf, then you have never truly seen what a chicken egg can be. When a heritage hen lives the way a chicken was meant to live, everything changes. She walks in the sunshine, scratches through living soil, hunts insects, picks at grasses, eats seeds, and takes in a wide range of natural foods. That variety shows up directly in the egg. The yolk becomes deeper, richer, and more vibrant, often turning a strong orange, sometimes almost reddish. That color is not a marketing trick. It is a sign of a bird eating a more diverse, natural diet and turning that nutrition into real food for your table. Pasture-raised eggs, from natural foragers, have been shown to contain twice the omega-3 fatty acids and 3 times the vitamin E of commercial eggs produced in confinement. And because a heritage hen is not being pushed beyond her natural limits, her body stays stronger for longer. She molts naturally, recovers properly, and continues producing eggs with firm whites and thick, strong shells. So when you collect eggs from a healthy heritage flock, you are not just filling a carton. You are bringing your family a richer, denser, more nourishing food source, produced by birds that are living closer to nature and working with the land instead of against it. Part 8. Bringing the legend back to your backyard. The industry may have tried to bury these birds, but it did not succeed. The Australorp and the Deathlayer survived because old farmers, small homesteaders, and dedicated breeders refused to let them disappear. They kept hatching, selecting, and protecting the birds that still carried those old strengths. Now the question is simple. How do you bring that kind of resilience back to your own backyard? First, be careful where you buy your birds. Do not rely only on the biggest commercial hatcheries, because many of them focus more on appearance, mass numbers, and easy sales than on true working performance. Look for local heritage breeders who actively select their flocks for hardiness, strong foraging instinct, steady egg production, and long-term health. Second, give these birds access to ground. You do not need a huge farm to raise them well. Even a modest backyard can work if you manage it properly. Rotational grazing, a deep mulch run, garden edges, compost areas, or orchard space can give heritage chickens the chance to scratch, hunt, dust bathe, and express the instincts that make them so valuable. Third, simplify the way you feed. You do not need to chase every expensive branded supplement on the shelf. A practical mix built around energy, protein, greens, and calcium can support a strong flock. Something as simple as 60% cracked corn or wheat for energy, 20% protein from black soldier fly larvae or seeds, 10% fresh garden greens, and 10% crushed oyster shell can help these birds thrive when combined with good pasture and clean water. When you raise chickens this way, you are not just keeping birds as a hobby. You are building a small, closed-loop food system. You are raising hens that can produce eggs, hatch replacements, lower your feed costs, fertilize your soil, and strengthen your family's food security year after year. The chicken that can lay 364 eggs in a year and rarely gets sick is not just a myth or an old farmer's story. She is proof of what is possible when people work with nature instead of forcing animals into short-term industrial production. Heritage breeds like the Australorp and the Deathlayer remind us that a truly valuable farm animal is not just one that produces hard for a few months. It is one that can stay healthy, reproduce naturally, forage well, adapt to the land, and keep serving the farm for years. These birds were pushed aside because they gave too much power back to ordinary farmers. They reduced dependence on commercial chicks, expensive feed, constant replacements, and fragile systems. But today, that power can return to your hands. Choosing heritage breeds is more than a poultry decision. It is a step toward independence. It is a way to protect old farming knowledge, rebuild food security, and bring stronger, healthier animals back to the backyard and the homestead. So now the question is yours to answer. Are you ready to move beyond the feed store trap and bring these living legends back into your flock? Which heritage breed would you choose for your own land this year? If this story helped you see chickens, farming, and food independence in a new way, hit the like button. share it with someone who cares about self-sufficient living, and subscribe to Farmyard Care. Keep growing, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next video.